Thanks, Chairperson. Thank you. Just a number of questions. Mr. Waters, did the Department of Justice ever give permission to any Garda to open an account, not to mention 50 accounts?
As I understand it, the process involved, and I'll maybe ask colleagues here, maybe who with more familiarity with the technicalities, but the process involved in opening a Garda account or opening a bank account, in the formal sense, does require the permission of a minister. But I stand corrected on that. Department of Finance permission.
Public expenditure.
Public expenditure. Yes.
There are a lot of questions I want to ask on direct provision and other matters, but these are just quick questions and that have arisen. And so I am not into demonising any organisation, and we need the Guards. And we've had them here before us on the last occasion, and the Department of Justice, and things emerged. Questions for the Department of Justice, questions for the Guards. And the first question, and I'm asking it again now, and it seems to me that permission had to be given by the Minister. So can we just have clarification, did it, and was 50 permissions given, or 48 or 42, or whatever the number of accounts were?
I'm advised that the consent of the Minister is required in the Garda Síochána 205. But to answer your question, in terms of the numbers, I'm not aware if we have any information in the department which would
sorry, now,
that.
I mixed up. Mr. Clifford, are you saying the permission was necessary under the 205 Act?
For any bank accounts created.
And was permission given?
See, I suppose, Deputy, what's not clear, it's not clear to me at this stage, is whether the accounts in question were opened pre-05 or not. So I'm not aware of any authorisations have been given since 05.
And pre-05, what was necessary for had the Guards a free hand in opening as many accounts as they wanted?
They wouldn't have had a free hand.
No. So what would have been the restrictions or the obligations on them?
Well, ultimately, sanction from the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform is required to was required then to open a public bank account, and is currently in relation to departments and offices.
Okay, so it was required then as well?
Yes.
And so isn't it just a very simple question now, demanding a simple reply? Was permission given 48 or 50 times? In fact, we do need clarification on many accounts, because sometimes it's 42, sometimes it's 48, and sometimes it's 50. I'll take the easier figure 50.
What we'll agree to do, Deputy, is that we will check within the available records which we have in the department.
But isn't that so? Okay, isn't that? You see, doesn't that go to the heart of the matter really in terms of trust? And so, a working group was set up. And what has been happening? Isn't this a fundamental question? How could so many accounts be opened without permission? Or if permission was given, let's have proof of that.
Well, these are the things that we need to find out.
Okay. I just, at this time of the evening, I seem to be the last or one of the last on these occasions, and tiredness is getting to me. But that's a fundamental question that should be answered, and certainly should be answered before you come before us on the next occasion. The companies were formed. Guards of higher rank and lower rank were directors, as I understand it. Was permission given for that?
I have no information which would indicate that it was given.
You should have. Sorry, now, Mr. Waters. We should have this information. This came up. You're fully aware of this in relation to the directors. Did they have permission to do that? The Department of Justice should be in a position to tell us.
We have found no records in the department.
But did they have permission? Can guards go off and form companies using public monies?
In the normal course, one would say no.
No, okay.
But I can't, because we haven't got any records on this issue, I can't say that back in 92, 93, when the Sportsfield Company was the Sportsfield Company was established in 92, 93, so we don't have records from 92, 93 when that was established to say whether the department.
You don't have records in the Department of Justice, is it?
Yes, yes.
Have you done a timeline and looked at, from the Department of Justice point of view, in relation to the interim audit and what was brought to your attention? Have you looked at that and looked and said, oh, see, 2006, a half-completed report. What was the Department of Justice response to that in 2006?
What our focus has been, as I said earlier on, is supporting the Gardaí to get to the bottom of the issues that have now emerged. Okay. I think anything that follows on from that will be followed up from that.
Mr. Waters, I've sort of given out earlier on for people making statements, and I'm reluctant, but I'm not. Let me put this. I have no confidence in what I'm hearing back today and on the last occasion. I simply haven't. There was an 06 report that seems to have been incomplete, an 08 report that was left, an 08 report that went up to the Commissioner who acted, and it went back down to the person in charge of Templemore, who said this money belonged to us. At least that's what I read. This money is our money. We're not getting enough from the government. We can invest it. Are you aware of that logic that was pointed out by me?
In the committee, yes. I actually saw that part,
okay,
yes.
And was I telling a mistruth or misreading the situation when I read it out?
I can't make a judgment of that, Deputy. You know,
no judgments. Yeah. No, I don't want judgments at all, because it's not a court of law. Yeah. But what I want to know is what concerns you had about that, and what you're doing about that.
It seemed to me that if a commissioner of Garda Síochána directed somebody in the organisation to do something and it wasn't done, there are questions to be answered around that.
I'm just talking about the role of the Department of Justice now.
But the Department can't second guess that, can't impose itself.
The Department of Justice was the money was coming through the Department of Justice, public money. No. Sorry, it was all public money that was going down.
Oh, and sorry, in terms of the payroll, yes. Sorry, I misunderstood what you said there. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, just
sorry. I beg your pardon. Sorry, clarify here, my colleagues. Yes.
Yeah, okay, Secretary General, I think what the Deputy is alluding to is maybe some of the funds that were the subject of the...
I'm talking about public funds per capita, or however it was allocated down to Templemore, that went into 50 accounts.
That was in the Garda board, those public funds, yes.
There's no misunderstanding about this. It's public funds going in, and we have a commissioner or somebody under the commissioner saying, yeah, that's right, but we're not getting enough money from government, so we're entitled to invest this, open up accounts and do what we want with it, because we're not getting enough money from government. I read that out, didn't I?
Yes.
Yeah, and so what's your reaction to that as a Department of Justice?
I think the information that has been disclosed in the audit report is unacceptable. There's no question about that. It's unacceptable. Yeah. The standards of financial control and accounting at the time would not, for one moment, withstand any scrutiny. No, it was wrong. It was wrong.
No, we're not looking at legacy issues here. This is something that went on and on. We're here struggling as ordinary TDs, reading lots of stuff and trying to hold the system to account as best we can. You're the people with the responsibility and the resources, and you were made aware of this way back. You've given the timeline today. Isn't that right? You were way back in September 15?
But as soon as we were made aware of it, steps were taken to stop this immediately.
What steps were taken?
Mr. O'Callaghan, do you want to fill in on that in respect?
Well, immediately, once the issues that had arisen in 2015 were around the existence of these accounts, were around the issues of the land that the golf club was on and the legal issues around that and the sports field company. They were the main issues that came to light at that point, and the immediate focus of the steering group, the committee that was set up by the Commissioner, was to address those issues, while at the same time causing an internal audit to be conducted that would get to the bottom of all the other issues and identify whether there was any fraud or irregularity. But the immediate focus, so during the period that committee was sitting and before the draft internal audit report was produced, the work that committee was overseeing was around resolving the legal issues with the sportsfield company, closing down the accounts, using up or getting rid of the resources that were sitting in the investment accounts. So that's what. So it was aimed at addressing the issues that still existed at that point in time, while awaiting the internal audit report.
I tell you what, I'm going to leave those questions until I read in detail Mr. Barrett's, which I've only sped read. And I'll come back to you. But I have a great difficulty in you just looked at certain issues and alarm bells didn't go off to say, oh God, let's look back, let's see. But look, I called to direct provision. This was meant to be a temporary measure, isn't that right? It was brought in. And I think in the executive summary of Judge Mahoney, I don't think O'Mahon, it was people were to be in direct provision for about 6 months. That was what was envisaged, isn't that right?
Yes.
How many are in direct provision now? You gave me the figures.
About 4,500 currently.
4,500. And one in 6 of those have got status and they remain in direct provision.
About 600, yeah. 600 people, 640 people, yeah.
How long are they in that position?
I don't have that precise figure, how long they will be there.
Why don't you, sir? Why don't you? Because it's a very important figure to have that many people with status still in direct provision.
Yeah.
How long have they been?
Sorry, just to clarify, Deputy, to clarify, they're not being retained, as it were, in direct provision by the Department or the State. No, they simply are not in position to be able to access housing.
I understand that, but it's a little bit disingenuous to say people have a choice whether to go into direct provision or not as well, which is a theme in the papers that I've read. That, well, asylum seekers don't have to go into direct provision, isn't that right? Yeah. They have a choice. Yeah. But they really have no choice. Well, because if they don't go in, they get no payments.
Oh no, they do get the out of pocket money. But in terms of the choice, traditionally about 50% of applicants for asylum have chosen to access the facilities of direct provision, whereas the other 50% have gone on and lived in a community with colleagues or friends or
That's
whatever.
right, somebody looks after them, they don't have access to funds. If somebody adopts them, as it were, and looks after them, they can stay. They're the lucky people that get. Otherwise,
they don't have access to welfare payments, I think. Is what
that's
you're
right.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that was a matter of decision by the government.
Well, I'm not arguing with you. I'm just trying to put this in perspective, where we have direct provision, which was supposed to be temporary. 17 years.
Sorry, it wasn't supposed to be temporary. The period we envisaged at the time was 6 months.
6 months.
And look, I put my hands up. We grossly underestimated that at the time.
Okay, now just 1 second. That was 2000, and we're in 2017. And we still have people who are in direct provision for longer than 5 years. I accept the figure has reduced, but it's still a substantial figure are there longer than 5 years. Isn't that right?
Of the cases that can't be addressed at the moment, I think it's of the order of about 250 cases.
250.
About that, in around that at the moment.
Longer than 5 years?
Of the cases that can't be addressed, we have made enormous inroads in ensuring getting people out of that.
How many are in there that are longer than 5 years?
At this stage, I haven't insisted 5 years or more. As of the 2nd of February, there is 355 people who have been granted status, 205 people who have a deportation order served against them, 251 are awaiting a final decision.
How many are longer than 5 years in direct provision?
801. Those three figures together. 811, sorry.
811 are longer than 5 years?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then on top of that, we don't know the figure for those who are in direct provision. We don't know what period of time, have their status, but are still in direct provision.
We can see if we can find that figure for you.
No, that's fine. That's fine. And so, just 1 second now. Yeah. And so we have a position where the Department of Justice and the country, indeed, the people we've elected, have allowed a system from 2000 up to 2017, which has been the subject of serious criticism, has forced a situation where they had to set up a review with the next judge in charge of it, who came up with 173 recommendations. They didn't come from the Department of Justice. They were forced, weren't they?
This was government policy.
That's okay. That's okay. But there were.
We're trying to find the figures for you in respect to people.
I just won't use up my time while you're typing the figure. You can always interrupt me and give me the figure.
Sorry, I beg your pardon.
That's all right. So we have 35, is it centres?
Yes.
And 7 are owned directly?
By the state, yes.
Okay. And then we have 28 run by 22 operators?
Run by, private commercial operators, yes.
In 5 years, I think 50 million per year was given out for 5 years.
In or around that, yes. Okay. It varied from year to year, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So somebody is making a huge and significant profit, isn't that right?
Somebody's providing a service to the state. Okay. Whether they're making a huge profit, I don't believe that to be the case.
No. Where would their profits be declared?
That's a matter for the companies themselves. Before we engage with them, they have to be fully tax compliant and compliant with our laws.
Okay.
And not alone have they to be fully tax compliant in terms of their contracts, but every time a payment is issued to them, they have to be tax compliant every month.
How many? 28, is it? Own 22, 28 run 22 centres, or is it 22 run 28 centres?
Mr. Banks, can you help me there? Is it 28 run 22 or
there are currently, there are 25 non-state centres, commercial centres.
Non-state?
Yeah, 25 today.
And how many entities run those 25?
25.
All separately? There's a separate...
It's very close to 25. I don't believe any centre is run by... Two centres are run by one entity, I think.
I had thought the one in the Montague and Portlaoise is run by a company that runs one in Bray or somewhere in Wicklow. Just make that observation.
We don't have any centre in County Wicklow at all. But
okay, well maybe they had one.
To the best of my knowledge, every centre is run by a different company.
Wasn't the case in the past.
It may not have been the case in the past, but that's the case.
Position now.
That's the case at present.
So no one company owns more than one centre.
That's.
Can you check that?
There's East Coast Catering run a centre in the reception centre in Balseskin, and also run two centres in Dublin. And there's another two companies that run two separate centres.
Oh, wait now. You see, I started off asking you and you said no. And so I'll tell you what you'll do for me. Can you write to us through the chair with that practical information?
Yes.
That would be great.
It's actually...
Maybe at the point where we were doing the report, we compiled an annex which is listing the number of the names of the commercial suppliers of accommodation and services. And what we drew attention to was that while there are maybe individual companies running individual centres, that there are connected persons. So there are shared directorships of companies.
Right.
So there is a connection there, although technically an individual company may be running an individual centre, but they are connected through their directorships.
Okay. So you might clarify that for us? Yeah, yes. Thanks very much. Yeah. In relation to the recommendations of the Mahon report, you've clarified how many have been. Which ones haven't been done and why?
The main ones that haven't been done relates to the allowances paid to people in direct provision. That's a matter of government policy.
Okay. Could you give us a list of the ones that you haven't done?
We can provide that, but that's the main one. That's actually...
Well, I've gone through and there are a few more.
Yeah. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Just occurred to me momentarily. The other main one is the question of the right to work.
Yes.
Yes, I beg your pardon. I should have mentioned that. Again, that's a policy matter for the government.
Okay, and we're one country, I think, out of hundreds that accept asylum seekers and don't give them the right to work. Would that be right? Certainly, we didn't opt into the European directive in relation to the right to work. Isn't that right?
A matter of policy for the government.
Oh, that's okay.
But it is a little more complex than that.
I accept
we're not just one country. There are other countries, and they have a very limited right to work in other countries as well.
Yeah. Do you know, Mr. Waters, in a background where 65 million people have been displaced, the biggest displacement since the Second World War, and in the background where thousands of people have died in the Mediterranean, I would have expected a slightly more human document and putting it in perspective. We have rights, we have obligations under international law. This is not a charity. We've signed up to international documents to provide. Okay, and so we put people into direct provision with huge consequences for their lives, isn't that right? Families sharing rooms, no independence, huge impact on their mental and physical health. Isn't that right?
We are making the improvements to improve the quality of life. But just one point, David. I think it's important to point out. Direct provision is one avenue by which immigrants come to Ireland.
Yes.
The asylum process is one avenue by which people come to Ireland. Tens of thousands of people come to Ireland to live, work, and study every year. From outside the EU every year. So it's not a case that our doors are closed to immigrants.
No, Mr. Waters, I don't know why you would jump to that. No, I didn't say anything like that. I'm specifically talking about the people in direct provision and how difficult it is for those families that have been direct provision for a very long time in restricted accommodation, limited choices with food. And I'm asking you just to, and I simply say it's very difficult for them. Isn't that right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And there's an onus on us to reduce the period of time within which they're in those.
Correct.
Okay. And as a result, Mahon set up, he chaired that review,
yes.
173 recommendations.
Correct.
And I'm asking you, how many haven't been implemented that are not policy decisions, that are not failures on our part, but your part?
I hesitate to call them failures.
Well, I take back the word failure, that you've not implemented.
It's work in progress. What we're trying to do is introduce, for example, catering facilities in all the centres so that people have a degree of independent living. They will be in a position to cook and prepare their own meals for their families. That does actually take time. Okay,
no, just listen to me. The biggest difficulty with this direct provision from day one has been the silence around it and the lack of information. Just from my experience on the ground in Galway as a local councillor, it's marred in secrecy. And so one way of helping this, the 173 recommendations, is for you to come back and say, these are the outstanding 10, these are the outstanding 15, this is where we're at with them. And then when we're talking to the people that work you have no problem with that?
Yeah, absolutely zero problem with that, Deputy. Zero problem with that.
All right, that's great.
To say that direct provision operates in secrecy with respect is not the case. It is not the case. It is one of the most debated issues in social policy in Ireland in recent years.
Mr. Waters, no, listen to me. I was a local politician for 17 years. I was there when they came, the asylum seekers in 2000 and 2001. It was marred in secrecy. We asked under freedom of information. This is not your fault, but we went through freedom of information to find millions of money was being paid 1 month in advance and no details of it. So it was marred in secrecy.
Well, that has changed.
When it came to local elections, one couldn't go in to canvass. One wasn't allowed access. There were all sorts of rules and regulations. Separate entirely from that, the impact on people's lives and mental health, the amount of people that have suffered, committed suicide. I take back the suicide whose circumstance. I take back that word. Whose circumstances were very affected. Eating disorders, serious impact on mental health as a result of these conditions. And they want to work. They don't want our charity. Asylum seekers. They want their case to be processed as quickly as possible, and the decision made so that they can work. You'd accept that?
Absolutely. That's why we have the new legislation in place.
Great. That was true. That's for another day. I'm not going into that. But you're saying one thing and then sort of justifying the system, which is of concern to me. You're saying one is policy. The policy was forced every step of the way because of the inhuman conditions. Okay. Finally, if you give me the list of recommendations that haven't been implemented, one of them I think was a diversity champion in the Garda Síochána. Another was an annual review of the I've looked at these and picked them out. Have they been implemented?
I'm aware that the Garda have appointed diversity officers in the force in respect of immigrant communities. The policy review one, I shall have to go back to you on that.
Okay.
Right, includes this. Okay, I'm moving on to Deputy Cassells, and thank you.